Hello and welcome to South Asia Chat, a podcast brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. I am your host, Rajni Gamage, a research fellow at the Institute. Sri Lanka's presidential elections are scheduled to be held next month on the 21st of September 2024. These are the first elections after the 2022 economic crisis and mass street protests which ousted President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. To understand the complexities surrounding the upcoming elections, I am joined today by Mr. Ameer Faaiz, a senior lawyer, chair of One Text Initiative, and a member of the Election Commission of Sri Lanka. Thank you for joining me today, Mr. Faaiz.
Thank you, Rajni. Thank you for having me.
So to get the conversation started, can I ask you how significant are the upcoming presidential elections in Sri Lanka?
If I may, if I am to answer in one word, it's quite significant. Our last election was, as you said, it was in 2020. Since then, a lot has happened. The onset of COVID pandemic and the country being dragged to experience a serious economic crisis, which resulted in Sri Lanka witnessing a popular people's uprising in 2022. This uprising led to the resignation of the then Prime Minister, which was soon thereafter followed by the resignation of the Executive President, who was elected with a popular support with large majority. Since these two resignations, there has been a question of legitimacy of the current government, the parliament as it were, and the people by and large have been demanding and waiting for an election to establish what they perceive as a people's mandate. Hence, it's an important election and it's quite a significant one.
We are aware that there are around 39 candidates that have been given nomination. And in the lead up to an elections, especially in a context in Sri Lanka where there was very high socio-political volatility into the 2022 and continuing in some aspects to the present, the issue of law and order is very important. And we saw recently with the issue of the Inspector General of Police, his position being vacated, concerns whether this would impact the peaceful nature in which the elections would be conducted and post-elections as well. What are your opinions on this?
Yes, there were certain concerns and still there are. The post of Inspector General of Police is not vacated, Rajni. It's been suspended by the particular person who was holding the position or post of Inspector General of Police has been barred from discharging his duties or barred from functioning as the Inspector General of Police by an order of the Supreme Court. And no sooner it happened, there was expectations, and the court also had mentioned in its order that the president may, if he so desires, appoint an acting IGP. And if he have had that acting IGP, I think this question of non-existence of an IGP wouldn't have arisen, because Sri Lanka has in the past also has conducted a few elections while there have been acting Inspector Generals of Police. However, as there was nothing forthcoming from the president's side, no IGP or acting arrangements were made, we, as the Election Commission, requested the president's office in writing to at least appoint an acting IGP to assist the Election Commission to hold a free and fair election, as the president is constitutionally required to do so. When I say constitutionally required to do so, the president is constitutionally required to support and help the Election Commission in holding a free and fair election. The president immediately responded through the secretary to the president, informing us that the secretary to the Ministry of Public Security has been directed to direct all regional deputy inspector generals of police to heed to the requirements, requests, and assistance that the Election Commission may require. And in that letter, it was also mentioned that the president has directed the secretary to the Ministry of Public Security to cooperate with the Election Commission's officials throughout the country to ensure that there is no slack in the law and order situation. The Election Commission thereafter summoned the Secretary to the Public Security Ministry and the Chairman of the National Police Commission, who assured the Election Commission that they would ensure full cooperation, and that the Secretary of the Ministry will also direct all the regional Deputy Inspector Generals of Police from all 9 provinces, all of them who showed commitment by heeding to our request for a meeting with very short notice, and all of them assured full cooperation. So far this is working well. And as you may know, we concluded nomination yesterday, and the law and order situation was managed quite well, and we hope things would be kept under control, and we don't foresee anything untoward happening.
Yes, thank you. I think that's a very comprehensive overview of the situation. Moving on with this presidential election, which is coming up in Sri Lanka, there has been talk about the increasing likelihood of a second count being activated. Could you explain to our listeners what this second count or what the presidential electoral system is like in Sri Lanka?
Well, we have an electoral system whereby the entire country votes as one electorate to elect an executive president. The Sri Lanka has been used to all these years, although there would have been many contestants at each election. It had been a race between 2 candidates, 2 main party candidates, or 2 candidates supported by major parties. And the requirement is that out of the polled votes, the winning candidate should secure 50% plus 1 vote. And as you speculated, there are speculation this time around that since there are at least 4 or 5 candidates who are considered kind of popular or main candidates, then there is a chance of anyone getting the 50% vote or more than 50% vote at the first count. So that is what is leading to this speculation of second count. So what we have, the system is, if that happens, if no one has secured more than 50% of the polled votes, the first 2, those who have come first and second, would be taken into count, and the rest of the candidates would be eliminated.
Yes.
And those eliminated candidates' votes would be thereafter counted to see whether those candidates, the voters who cast their votes for the eliminated candidates, have also indicated their preferences. Now, within our system, you can mark either 1 or 1 and 2 or 1, 2 and 3. All these kind of voting, that either 1 or 1 and 2 or 1, 2 and 3 would be considered valid votes. And then amongst those who have been eliminated, if anyone has been named or from the first 2, if anyone could have secured a second or a third preference, their votes will be accordingly added to the first and second candidates who have become first and second. And once that segregation and adding is done, thereafter again a total count will be made, and in that event, who has got the highest vote would be declared the president, because it's not necessary. After the second count, the winning candidate should have still passed the 50% mark. No.
Yes.
So that's how it is done. I hope I made myself clear.
Yes. At the same time, Mr. Faaiz, the system sounds a little bit complicated, especially because in Sri Lanka, so far, in any of the past presidential elections, we have not had to face this situation since the frontrunner candidate did secure the 50% of the poll vote. So do you think that there is adequate voter literacy on this front? And what measures are the Election Commission of Sri Lanka taking towards this?
Well, the rate of literacy on this particular question, Rajni, is yet to be tested, to be frank. But
Yes.
however, after having come to the Election Commission, I have also paid a little interest to know what has happened in the past. And the Election Commission officials say that they always carry out an awareness campaign as regards how the voting has to be done through media, public announcement, regional awareness program, etc. So it's going to happen this time around too. And then in addition, the Election Commission would also be meeting the political parties quite often between now and the run up to the election. And then we would also request them, because they are the political parties are the ones which are going to take out the campaign to the masses, and they will be able to be in a better position to address their own constituencies in much more effective way. So we are also requesting them to explain to the voters to mark preferences if possible. This is in no way that Election Commission is expecting a second count, or Election Commission is promoting any kind of preference. But in the event, if something happens like that, for the people to be made aware of the required method of voting, and also to educate them to vote correctly. Say, for example, someone asked me the other day, if one puts a cross and then 2 and 3, would the vote be valid? So there is still discussion going on within the Election Commission, because the law is clear. Law only requires marking of 1 or 1 and 2, or 1 and 2, 1, 2 and 3. But then there is also a provision in the law to say at the time of counting, if the chief counting officer is satisfied, or if the chief counting officer is clear as regards the voter's intention, then the vote is not to be rejected. So using that, I think the Election Commission would, at the last minute, issue certain guidelines as not to reject votes that are fairly clear in its marking. So with regard to creating awareness, then we have also co-opted there are a few accredited election monitoring and election observer groups, which also on their own carry out electoral campaigns, the proper conduct of electoral campaign, avoiding violence and all that kind of thing. So they will also be involved in creating better awareness this time.
Right. Linking up to that point you raised about violence, one of the key challenges or concerns generally during election cycle are issues of election law violations and election violences. Could you elaborate what the nature of these violations or the state of election violences have been? For example, I saw a recent media report where the Election Commission, I think a member of it, stated that most of the abusers of these violations have been coming from the side of the state. So could you elaborate a bit more on this situation?
Yes, to preface it, I would say over a period of last couple of decades, there have been greater reduction in terms of violence. But as you rightly said, the preponderant majority of election violations reported up to now relate to the misuse or attempted misuse of state resources and or attempts to distribute goodies through within courts development activities, by the government or the members of parliament related to the ruling section. Say, for example, there are several appointments to public offices which are being speculated or which are being attempted to be made now. Promotions being attempted, and all these, a few things happen just prior to the declaration of election, which we did on the 26th of July. So what happened just before the election Commission did not have anything to do, because the power of the Election Commission to monitor and to stop or to prevent these things vests in the Election Commission only after the declaration of election is done. That is after the 26th of July, 2024. So when even letters that have been sent prior to 26th of July, but the appointments or promotions are in the coming weeks or just after that, the Election Commission has stepped in to stop most of them. But then the state officers keep coming up with excuses saying that these appointments have gone through a process of years and all that. So what we have somehow managed is to differ. Strictly, we had a meeting with all the secretaries to the ministries summoned to the election, because election law provides that muscle. We invited all of them and told them, and they came up with some very valid arguments. But the election commission strictly told them, no, if there is anything that needs to be done, say for example, appointment of a doctor to a hospital, far away hospital where there are no doctor and things like that, we have told them that to send that all the details to the election commission and justify your appointment, and then to request permission, and then we will look into case by case and allow. And then we also told them, say, even for example, now there are about 1,200 medical officers to be appointed who have passed out their intern and things like that. There is no point in keeping them in abeyance for 2 months. What we said was, okay, as you do usually, order of merit where they are to be posted, you can post, but no fanfare, no political involvement, no politicians going and giving appointment letters, things like that. That's how we have been managing that. And then there are also issues. Now, when you do that, say for example, you defer certain appointments. Some people would have been waiting for a teaching appointment, especially, the public sector appointment is something that the Sri Lankans look forward to, right? And then the moment the election commission defers appointment, we get thousands of calls asking that, we have been waiting for so long, but then you are now blocking that. So it's also difficult for us to explain to them, but then that's how we have been managing. Some ministry secretaries, under undue pressure from the ministers, do certain things. A case in point is that a minister was inaugurating a water supply project to an area in the north. So area in the north, as you know, have been suffering from the war, devastated, and development is necessary. But the problem is that you wait for all these while and go and do it just now on the eve of the election or just before the election. That's going to be going to give undue advantage to the ruling side. So we have been looking into cases by cases, and we have been managing somehow. And it's not only that, there are people find different ways and means. As you said, the ruling government or ruling party and allied to ruling party are pretty aware of what's going to happen. They even go use people all over the countryside to block even public spaces. Anyone who is familiar with the Sri Lankan situation knows that political parties hire or book public playgrounds or common spaces to keep their rallies, propaganda meeting, and things like that. So one party or even the ruling party, if it is smart, what they do is they go and block the entire spaces like that for different meetings and for different events and things like that. So that issue also came up, and what now we have looked into it and kind of forcefully unbooked certain dates and spaces so that the others can also have access. So this is quite now. Recently, if you know an area in the east where Muslims are majority, and the former founder leader and former leader of Muslim Congress, Sri Lanka Muslim Congress, Mr Ameer Ashraf, is quite revered by the Muslim community. So someone has come with a bright idea of setting up a museum for him now. The man died in 2000. So we had to, the commission had to say, no, you can do that after the elections are over, and we had to defer. So, and when we go on blocking the bureaucrats, the government still finds loopholes, and there was all of a sudden unexpected appointments through the governors of provinces. So, but we also managed to strictly write to them and recall some of the appointments that were made, and we are blocking like that. But then that's the preponderant majority of violations of election laws that are happening now. But we are day in and day out, we are managing that. And then there are also the private media. Sometimes there is also a kind of private media, although the recent constitutional amendment brings in the private media also to be guided and governed by the guidelines. Unfortunately, no sanctions have been given to private media like that the state media. But then there is complaint, which we have also monitored. One particular media is unduly favoring one particular candidate. So now, in those circumstances, what we have thought was that we will send them analysis and ask them to desist from doing that, with the warning that if they continue to do that, we will be able to do some action, take some action that are within our powers to inform the public such media is, conducting in an improper manner, or providing somebody with undue advantage and things like that. So this has been a struggle.
Yes. So that was actually one of the next questions which I had, which is in terms of it being among the basket of challenges that the Election Commission faces. You mentioned private media, and in terms of them providing partial coverage for a particular candidate or political camp. How is the issue of, say, disinformation and hate speech, especially with the increase in use of social media? How are issues of disinformation and hate speech tackled by the Election Commission?
That's another challenge. Actually, we have been inundated with regulating and monitoring the mainstream media, the television and all that. Now, the social media is another huge factor. And to compound that is the advent of artificial intelligence. As you know, the Election Commission is by law empowered to issue media guidelines and certain directions containing do's and don'ts.
Yes.
The directions also cover the state property, which we adverted to earlier, the misuse of state property, including state media and all that. So that is covered somehow. And when the guidelines are issued, the media, both private media was brought in after the 19th Amendment, with the amendment that the Election Commission's writ also covers the private media. But unfortunately, the private media, there is no sanction provided by law, as opposed to the state media, which if they violate, Election Commission has the authority to impose certain sanctions. But however, as I explained earlier, we are adopting certain methodology to rein in the private media also. To compound, the fact is that the huge penetration of social media and also the recent advent of artificial intelligence. And unfortunately, Election Commission is not resourceful enough to monitor, and it needs sophisticated knowledge, sophisticated technology, sophisticated equipments,
Yes.
and huge amount of resources if you are going to do that. But then we do not want to be sitting idly and say that we can't do that. What we have done is we have co-opted, we have solicited partnership, we have co-opted some civil society organizations that have been involved in monitoring social media, monitoring election violations and things like that. And we have arranged a few kind of a consortium, which they will also do on their own with their experts, probably finding some resources from outside, and to monitor social media and artificial intelligence for particularly targeting harmful content or fake news that can either be advantageous to one candidate or prejudice another candidate. And then we have actually formed a consortium of consortia. One would look at the social media and artificial intelligence and things like that. Then the others will monitor the mainstream print media. One will monitor the mainstream televisions, and would keep us informed of possible violations in terms of unfair practices and things like that. And then we have also taken steps to make links with the main social media platforms outside Sri Lanka, the worldwide ones, and have established some links. And then we are in the process of finalizing certain understanding that when the Election Commission monitoring section makes a request either to remove or to block certain pages or certain content, that will be done. So for that, the locally formed consortia also will add some credence and also will negotiate with the main social media platforms to say that when the Election Commission makes a request, that would be a verified request and for them to act as soon as possible. And that's how we are trying to see whether how much we can mitigate the adverse impact of social media and artificial intelligence.
Right. So moving on to my final question, which is to do with the Campaign Finance Act. We understand that this act will be operationalized for the first time in this election. What are some of the challenges and complexities that the Election Commission foresees in effectively implementing this law?
This law would have been actually tested had the local authorities election been held as declared last year.
Yes.
This law was enacted last year during the time the local authority elections were due.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, since the local authority election was not held, and as you say, yeah, this is the first time it's going to be tested. And we have been having meetings after meetings, and the law, although there have been a huge demand for a long time for regulating campaign finance, but the law has its own certain, since it was actually or hastily drafted and passed through the parliament, we also find there are certain loopholes. And in fact, even currently, the criminal liability will be only become, I mean, once you, the complexities you asked about the complexity,
Mm-hmm.
complexities will be also to agree on the maximum limit or a limit a candidate could spend for the campaign. There are certain regulations in terms of disclosing the sources of fundings and all that. I think that can be regulated. But again, the issue of now today we were told there are certain social media pages have been sold or blocked for 2 months. And how do you overcome that is a matter that we are still kind of discussing as to how do we do it and how do we bring in. And if the money has been paid before the implemented, now only yesterday we knew who are the candidates going to be. So, and the law also requires that we have a consultation with the candidates or their authorized agent to listen to them as regards what would be their preferred maximum amount per voter or things like that. So we had this meeting today, and we have had requests from 50 cents per voter to 1,000 rupees per voter. But Election Commission did not wait without doing anything. We were also looking into collecting data with regard to the fixed costs, like how much an advertisement in the print media would cost, how much would it cost when it is done on television advertisement, social media pages, and things like that. And also with regard to events like holding a public meeting, putting up a stage and things like that. So we have come up with the formula, and probably by before end of today, we will come with an agreement with the maximum amount per voter a candidate could spend. But monitoring is going to be difficult, and also we have space. For example, within 21 days after the election, each candidate has to declare their accounts as to how much they have spent. And then we will have some monitoring that could have been done. Any public who is not very happy with the accounts that's been given, or when they have monitored and calculated, they can also come and make complaint. And then what happens is that when we make this, when we gather all these complaints, and when we want to prosecute someone, we have to go to the police, and then the police will have to go to the Attorney General Department. So that makes the process a bit more complicated. And then we are also saddled with another option. In terms of the law, the moment the president is elected and while he is in office, he cannot be criminally prosecuted. So that's another moot area that we need to look at it. So all this is being done. Our Election Commission's election dispute resolution unit is inundated with issues like this, but then we are co-opting partners to see what can be done. So no doubt it's a complicated process, but we are trying to do best with the law that is available to us, Rajni.
Right. So thank you very much, Mr. Faaiz. I'm sure that this is a very busy period for you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Rajni. Thank you for having me.
Right. So we were joined today by Mr. Ameer Faaiz, a senior lawyer, chair of One Text Initiative, and a member of the Election Commission of Sri Lanka, who was discussing the complexities and challenges for the upcoming presidential elections in September 2024 in Sri Lanka. You are listening to South Asia Chat. To learn more about our work, please visit us at isas.nus.edu.sg. You can also get updates through social media. We are on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you.